Thanks, Lockie. Yes, I'm John Keely. I'm a dairy farmer from northern Victoria in Cohuna. I'm 5th generation and very proud of that. Do have the 6th generation at home, and the farm has been in our family since 1874. We have about 423 hectares, which is all flood irrigated. We milk a predominantly Holstein herd, or Collingwood cows as I like to call them. And we have a split calving from that goes for 8 weeks. It starts March the 1st and August the 1st. I'd just like to thank the Gardiner Foundation, in particular to CEO Mary Harney and Project Officer Aaron Gosling for their great support and help right throughout this Nuffield journey. Also to my wife, who was my travelling companion for 90% of my personal study, and then typed up all my handwritten notes for me, which I was able to collate. And finally, to everyone at home that kept the show running, in particular to my 19-year-old son. It was only his 2nd year on the farm, and he ran it under pretty trying conditions. It was probably one of the wettest years in 40 years, and it was to the point that he actually had to go get the cows on the tractor. So he done a really good job in a tough year. So my study topic, it came about because of the extended dry period from the last 15 years. We had to change our practices. We were confining cows, feed them on a feed pad, so all of a sudden we're ending up with large amounts of manure. So I was sitting on the tractor one day wondering, how can I better utilise this? We'd sort of tried composting, a bit of green waste, but it wasn't being done properly. So I thought, is there a better way that we can utilise it? Hence the reason I decided to apply for a Nuffield. And as part of that, I wanted to look at the regulatory impact, what forces people to do things in a certain way, and what innovative practices were out there. And as part of that, I wanted to, well, the countries I visited, I went to the USA, visited extension officers, I visited research scientists, farmers, more farmers and milk processors, just to see what they were doing and what they were offering. So the regulatory impact, and Europe was the first one of the ports of call, most notably Denmark and Netherlands. And those 2 countries in particular limit the amount of nutrients that can be applied to the land at any one time. Also, they're restricted in the way that effluent manure can be applied. From September, anywhere from September to October, there's a period where they've got to stop. Right through to the end of January, there's not allowed to be any effluent or commercial fertiliser allowed to be applied to the land because of the build-up and the potential runoff into waterways. And then there's a method of application. So probably 10 years ago in Denmark, trailing splash plates had been banned, so where it's shot out the back of a slurry spreader, they were using trailing hoses. They were banned too because they had ammonia losses of 15% once this raw slurry hit the ground. They wanted the injection method, because when that was injected into the ground, it was just basically a little furrow with it filled. Those losses were 8%. So they had to change their ways. And then you go to the USA, where in many instances, there's once you get to a particular size, which is around about 600 animals, it's called your combined animal feeding operation. You've got then you're compulsorily required to have a nutrient management plan. And what happens in a lot of instances is that businesses, they get to just beyond that and then replicate it. if they go over, they tend to go really big. They'll make it quite large. That photo was at, I was fortunate enough to visit Cattle Empire in Kansas. That place, in one facility, they had 4 facilities, but that facility held 80,000 Holstein steers. So there was a massive manure problem there that they had to deal with. Then you got New Zealand with the milk processing giant in Fonterra, and them wanting to protect their clean and green image. Up until 2 years ago, if you had a 2-pond effluent system where essentially the water effluent run from the dairy into the one pond, overflowed into the second pond. Once the second pond was full, it just run straight into the waterway, and that was their problem was solved. Obviously, Fonterra didn't particularly like that. They manoeuvred things around together with regional councils to change that, at great expense to farmers too in the end. And then you've got Wales, where currently in Pembrokeshire in the Milford Haven area, they're trying to, the Welsh Assembly are trying to make that area and what's called a nitrate volatile zone and bring it under the EU directives. This places a lot of pressure on, but there's a collaborative program developed by a milk processing company called First Milk, a potato co-op, and a couple of machinery dealers, and also the Welsh Natural Resources to minimise that impact. If they were to do it under the guidelines of the EU directives, only the benefit of nitrates running into the Milford Haven waterways would be a reduction of 10%. Under this modelling that's already in place, and farmers are able to actually choose from a suite of packages that suit them best, they could actually reduce that target by 90% with a lot less cost to the farmer. So that is a real, that at the moment is still only a concept that the farmers and these organisations are still trying to get government to bring in. So as part of the innovation, nothing really changed until they were forced to, hence what happened in Denmark with the injection. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a sec. Some of the things were the denitrification of slurry, acidification of slurry, adaptation of machinery, and another one was anaerobic digestion. So this slide, it shows a biological manure processing plant. So what basically happens is the water goes into this plant, into this tub, 1,000 cubic metres, and a lot of compressed air is blown up through those black plates in the bottom. Those black plates are about 600 mil wide with lots of little holes, and it's blowing the air out so that the ammonia evaporates out through the top. They're not worried about the ammonia losses, they're just worried about getting rid of the water. Because what happens in the Netherlands is that they, because of the small land mass, they've got to export their manure. 70 to 80% of pigs are located in the south, and they will produce a massive amount of manure. Manure is only 7% dry matter. So the more water you've got in a product that's got to be exported, the more costly it is. So it doesn't have to go far. So the more dry you can get it, but then the more water you take out, you've still got a problem with nitrates in it. This unit is helping resolve that problem. What you end up with this is a product that's got 0 nutrients and a pH of 7. So it's got no real commercial value, it's a yellowy water. But what it allows the farmers to do is they've got surety to get rid of it somewhere. They can put it on the land anywhere without any effect to that there's more nutrients being applied to it. The acidification of slurry. That's just basically sulfuric acid mixed in with effluent. As I mentioned earlier, the Danish government wanted the farmers to go back to 8% ammonium losses, and they weren't real happy about it, because when you've got to go back to injection, an injection machine only covers about 8 metres at a time, and it's requiring a 350 horsepower tractor to pull it. So it's quite expensive. You've got trailing hoses, which were where the manure slurry was being dropped straight onto the ground. They're down the hoses. They're up to anywhere from 24 to 36 metres wide, so they cover a wide area. So what happens is the slurry is carried on the front of that tractor in a 1,000 litre shuttle. It's pumped to the back, and it goes in at a measured dose of about 2 to 3 litres per 1,000 litres of slurry. And what that does is it creates a foam, creates bubbles, and that eats the carbon and dissolves them. And that's, yeah, makes a foam, and then that just drops onto the ground, which is what you'll see there. So some of the benefits of it are that you've got, with that acidification, there's actually more plant available nitrogen. There's higher yields have been measured in both winter wheat and clover grass in Denmark, and it's now the in-grass injection and acidification are of equal value. So there's it's no extra cost. So they don't like tractors driving over pastures, so they're more inclined to do that now. This is in New Zealand, so whilst it's not new technology, I thought it was actually quite innovative, in that when you see most injectors, there are coulter blades on the back of that injector, and you'll see them on the back of the slurry tankers. This guy, Nigel Pedley, he's taken it off the back of the tanker, made it into a 3-point linkage unit, and so he drives along on the hose. But what makes this more efficient is he's got another 2 or 3 tankers, depending on how far it's being hauled, that are coming backwards and forth. So that injector's actually working the whole time, as opposed to only working when it's on the back of the tanker in the paddock. And with that, I was able to walk in my boots across that. They did not get wet, and they didn't smell. That grass was like 3-4 inches high, and it allows them in urban areas or close to townships to actually apply that effluent, as opposed to still using it's either injection or splash plates in New Zealand, or sprays. Then I went to Denmark. Went to a place in Holsted, NGF Nature's Energy, and what I found is that Digestion is a super fertiliser. It is fantastic as a fertiliser as compared with raw effluent. They can grow up to 20% more dry matter with that same amount of effluent. Now, obviously, the problem with anaerobic digestion is the high investment cost of putting them in. Now, everywhere I went, there's none of them were doing it without receiving subsidies. So this was a company. It wasn't owned by a single person, and they obviously required a certain amount of energy to heat to create to get the bugs to work. When I asked them, "Do you use your own gas?" "Oh, hell no. We put it back into the grid. We buy it out of the grid because we buy it cheaper than what we sell it for." So why would you? The other issue with anaerobic digestion, it came up when I was at the Manure Expo in Ohio, and as well when I went to AFBI in Northern Ireland. And the researchers there really highlighted it was that they will put grass silage and corn silage into the part of the brew to keep it going because it helps create more gas. The issue there is if you've got it on your farm, you've got to decide whether you want to produce energy or whether you want to produce milk, because dairy effluent is not a great producer of gas, unlike it's not as good as pig or poultry manure. So there is a conundrum. You've actually got to decide what one do you want to do. You're going to because if you're feeding the cows, the bloke that's feeding the cows, he's not going to want to give away his good feed to go to that anaerobic digestion. Poor quality silage just doesn't work. It's got to be good quality. So my conclusions, good practices are a must. And I think it's important to look elsewhere. And this slide shows, was taken at the Manure Expo in Ohio. Now in the USA and Canada, there's a lot of tile drainage. And what this illustrates was they dug down, put a smoke machine on it, pumped the smoke up, and within 30 seconds of that smoke machine pumping smoke up, it was coming out of the ground. And so that just shows how quickly the effluent can go down through the ground. And when it goes down through the ground, it runs down straight into the tile drainage and out the end of it and into a waterway. Now in August 2016, there was what was called the Toledo water crisis. Toledo's on Lake Erie, same lake as Cleveland and Detroit, and it has a $10 billion a year tourist industry. Toledo has a population of 500,000, and for 2 days they had no potable drinking water. There's a lot of political clout in that region, and 40% of the nutrients come from 28 counties, 28 out of the 40 counties in the Marmy River watershed. So it's important that we really look at how we apply things, not just whack it on just for the sake of just because we've got it there. Another thing is the application, in particular the timing and the rate. So timing is obviously makes sense to put it on. Just treat it should be treated like a fertiliser, not like a waste product. You don't whack fertiliser just on for the sake of it. It's important to do the same with the effluent. Put it on when the plant requires it. And the same with the rate, don't just whack too much of it on. And it's important to keep records of those applications. And there's a number of apps out there. There's a picture, I was on the New Zealand one, so farm dairy effluent app that allows you to calculate the nutrients of what's in the water or in that waste product and how much is going to be go onto those paddocks. And finally, in terms of nutrient value for solid manure, raw is if you want nutrient value, raw manure is actually the best. Simple as that. And I'll just finish off with my great friend here that I travelled the globe with on my Global Focus program. Ben Edser said you need to go see a bloke by the name of Jack Shit, because he's the son of Ore Shit, who was a fertiliser magnate. And he's married to O Shit, who's the owner of Knee Deep in Shit but Incorporated. And I also got to meet their lovely children, Holly, Fuller, Giver, Loader and Pisa, and the twins Dip and Deep. So on that, I'd just like to thank Crocker Shit for helping me put this together. Thank you.